There is a silent, exhausting war happening inside the architecture of your mind. And the most dangerous part is that you've gotten so good at winning it that no one even knows you're fighting. While everyone thinks you're the calm one in the crisis, your nervous system is running a full diagnostic scan on every person in the room, while simultaneously calculating 17 different exit strategies. If you're nodding along, you might already understand what we're about to unpack. The brutal truth that being an INFJ isn't just about sensitivity or introversion. It's about surviving in a world that your brain wasn't designed for. While everyone assumes you're thriving because you look so composed on the surface, stick around because by the end of this video, you'll understand why INFJ survival is a full-time psychological job that most people never see. But here's the thing. Most people assume this scanning is a gift. The reality, it's actually a high-stakes survival mechanism that most INFJs don't realize they're trapped in. Most people miss this next detail, but it changes everything about how you view your own exhaustion. Before we start, please hit the like button, comment, and subscribe so you won't miss any of our weekly deep dives into the world of personality types. And if you're looking for a deeper understanding of yourself and your INFJ personality, browse our favorite INFJ products in the description, and click the link in the comments to take our favorite free personality test. The invisible scanning system that never sleeps. Here's what actually happens inside an INFJ's mind every single day. While most people walk into a room and see furniture and faces, your brain immediately starts running what can only be described as emotional surveillance software. You're not choosing to do this. You can't turn it off. It's like asking someone why their heart beats. Your nervous system just automatically begins processing micro-expressions, detecting tension shifts, and absorbing the unspoken conflicts floating between people. Now, everything I've just told you about emotional surveillance is just the surface level. It gets much heavier when you realize what your brain is doing with that data while you sleep. This next part is where things get interesting. Imagine if your brain came equipped with thermal imaging technology that detected emotional temperatures no one else could see. That's basically your reality, every moment of every day. While everyone else is just having normal conversations, your internal system is analyzing why your coworkers' shoulders are tense, or picking up on the fact that your partner is stressed about something they haven't mentioned yet. You're processing all of this information simultaneously without your permission. The exhaustion that follows this constant emotional surveillance is something most people will never fully comprehend. By the time you finish a normal workday, you haven't just completed your actual job responsibilities. You've also processed the emotional state of every single person you encountered. You've picked up on meeting tensions that nobody else even noticed. You've absorbed subtle anxiety from that person putting on a brave face. You've carried the weight of unspoken conflict that everyone else completely missed. This is why so many INFJs describe their days as emotionally heavy, even when nothing dramatic actually happened. Nothing dramatic happened to anyone else. You just spent 8 hours processing emotional information that your brain receives in real time, while everyone around you remains blissfully unaware. It's like being the only person in a theater who can see all the machinery behind the curtain, while everyone else just watches the show. You can never unsee how it all works, and you can never just enjoy the performance. The truly difficult part is that this skill starts to feel more like a curse the moment you realize it's not something you can control. You can't tell your brain to stop noticing things. You can't choose to become more oblivious just so you can be less tired. You're permanently equipped with a neurological system that's designed to absorb emotional information, whether you want to or not. Here's where it gets even more complex. This scanning system doesn't just pick up on current emotions. It also detects patterns and predicts outcomes. You can sense relationship trouble months before it surfaces. You recognize when someone is being dishonest before they've actually done anything to prove it. You intuitively understand the long-term consequences of choices that people are making impulsively. This foresight feels like a superpower until you realize you're living 10 steps ahead while having to survive the present moment. The loneliness of this constant background processing is devastating. You're absorbing emotional undercurrents that no one else notices, which means you're often the only person who truly understands what's happening in any given situation. You see the tension everyone else misses. You recognize the pain people are hiding. You understand the dynamics that others are blind to. But you can't share this knowledge without seeming invasive or overwhelming, so you carry it alone. What makes this even harder is that people expect you to function normally, while your system is running these intensive background programs. They don't realize that your brain is working overtime just to exist in social spaces. They assume your composure means everything is easy for you, when the reality is that you're managing an incredible amount of sensory and emotional input just to appear functional. This invisible scanning system never gets a break. It runs while you're sleeping, processing the day's emotional data. It runs during conversations, making you hyper-aware of every shift in tone or energy. It runs in crowds, overwhelming you with information about strangers you'll never see again. The system that makes you so insightful and empathetic is also the system that exhausts you in ways that are impossible to explain to people who don't share this neurological wiring. The performance that's killing you slowly. Here's something that will sound completely contradictory to anyone who doesn't understand how INFJs operate. You can be absolutely falling apart internally while maintaining such a convincing exterior that the people closest to you have no idea you're struggling. In fact, the better you are at hiding your pain, the more people assume everything is fine with you. This isn't fakeness. This isn't you being dishonest or fraudulent. This is a sophisticated emotional skill you've developed, probably without even realizing you were developing it. You learned early on that your emotions affect other people. You noticed that when you're upset, it creates tension in the room. You saw how your sadness made others uncomfortable, or how your anxiety seemed to spread to people around you. So you learned to compartmentalize, regulate, and present a version of yourself that doesn't burden anyone with the reality of what you're experiencing internally. You've become so masterful at this performance that you can sit in a meeting while experiencing severe anxiety and nobody would guess it. You can be dealing with devastating heartbreak and still show up for your friends' problems with full presence and genuine care. You can be struggling with depression and still make everyone around you feel heard and valued. You're a virtuoso of emotional theater, and unfortunately, the show never ends. The hidden cost of this performance is that it creates a profound isolation that's almost impossible to articulate to others. You're surrounded by people, friends, family, coworkers, partners, and yet you feel fundamentally alone because none of them know the real you. They know the edited version. They know the filtered, curated self that you present to the world. The authentic you. The one with real struggles, genuine fears, and actual breaking points remains largely hidden. This creates a vicious cycle that slowly chips away at your sense of self. The longer you maintain the performance, the more you start to internalize dangerous questions. You begin to wonder if anyone would actually like the real you. You start questioning whether the people in your life care about you or just the version of you that they've come to know. You become terrified of what might happen if you actually let someone see how fragile you are. What if they can't handle it? What if they pull away? What if they decide you're too much work? What if they realize you're not as strong as you appear? So you keep performing, keep hiding, keep managing everyone's perception of you, while the real you suffocates under the weight of constant pretending. Many INFJs report feeling distinctly lonely, even in their most intimate relationships. Not because their partners don't love them, but because their partners have fallen in love with the performed version, the composed, understanding, supportive version, while the real person underneath remains largely unknown and unwitnessed. It's like being perpetually unseen while being constantly visible. People see you all the time, but they're not actually seeing you. They're seeing the carefully constructed presentation you've learned to maintain, the version that doesn't cry at inappropriate times, or have panic attacks, or need reassurance, or struggle with basic decisions, or feel overwhelmed by simple social interactions. This performance becomes so automatic that sometimes you lose track of where the real you ends and the performance begins. You start to question your own emotions, wondering if what you're feeling is authentic or just part of the show. You begin to doubt your own needs because you've gotten so good at suppressing them for the comfort of others. The most devastating part is that this isn't sustainable. No one can maintain this level of emotional theater indefinitely without serious consequences. Your nervous system eventually rebels. Your body starts to break down. Your mental health deteriorates. But even when you reach your breaking point, you often continue the performance because you've built your entire identity around being the person who has it together. The people in your life have come to depend on your stability, your wisdom, your emotional availability. They've never seen you fall apart, so they don't know how to support you when you finally do. This leaves you feeling even more isolated when you need connection the most. The saint versus strategist war inside your head. You attract people who need you like moths to a flame, not because you advertise your availability or put out some kind of help wanted sign, but simply because it's obvious to everyone that you actually care. You listen without judgment. You understand perspectives that others miss completely. You have insight into people's problems that they've never heard from anyone else. So naturally, they keep coming back for more. Before you know what's happened, you've become the unofficial therapist, advisor, and emotional support system for basically everyone in your life. Your friend calls you during their crisis. Your family members lean on you for perspective. Your coworkers seek you out for guidance. Your partner relies on you to process their emotions. And you say yes to all of it. Because you genuinely want to help. And because you believe that if you don't help them, who will? Most people love the saint, but they would be terrified if they saw the strategist running the numbers in the background. And there is one specific calculation the strategist makes that determines whether your relationship survives or implodes. We're about to unpack exactly what that is. But here's what nobody talks about. Here's the brutal reality hiding behind your helpful facade. While everyone sees the saint, the compassionate listener who always has time for their problems, there's a strategist running calculations in the background that would shock them. You're not just absorbing their emotional content. You're simultaneously calculating how much energy you have left, how long you can maintain this conversation, and what exit strategy you'll need to deploy when you hit your limit. This internal strategist is constantly monitoring your psychological fuel gauge. It's tracking how many emotional deposits you've made versus how many withdrawals have been taken from your system. It's calculating the cost of each interaction and determining whether you can afford to give what's being asked of you. But you can't let anyone see this calculation happening, because it would shatter their perception of you as someone who gives freely and unconditionally. The saint wants to help everyone. The strategist knows that helping everyone will destroy you. This creates an internal war that rages constantly beneath your composed exterior. The saint feels guilty for having limits. The strategist feels resentful for being ignored. The saint says yes to requests for help. The strategist keeps track of how many times people have failed to reciprocate when you needed support. You start to realize that your value to most people is directly tied to your ability to be their support system. They don't call you when things are going well. They don't check on your emotional state. They don't ask how you're doing unless they need something from you. This recognition is devastating because it means that many of your relationships are fundamentally transactional, even though you've been approaching them from a place of genuine care. The guilt that accompanies this realization is crushing. The moment you finally can't help someone because you're too depleted, too exhausted, too broken, you experience shame that's almost unbearable. You feel like you've failed. You feel like you're a bad friend, family member, or partner. You question your value as a person because your entire identity has become wrapped up in being the person who helps, supports, and understands everyone else. This guilt is so powerful that it often drives you right back into overhelping mode. You push yourself even harder. You sacrifice even more of your own well-being. You take on problems that aren't actually yours to solve. You become responsible for other people's emotional stability in ways that are completely unsustainable. And the entire time, you're running on fumes, burning out in ways that affect your physical health, your mental health, and your ability to show up authentically anywhere in your life. The invisible rope you've tied around your own neck tightens a little more with each person you try to save, each boundary you fail to set, and each time you choose their comfort over your own survival. The strategist sees this happening and sounds alarm bells, but the saint overrides these warnings because helping others has become so central to your sense of self that you can't imagine who you would be if you stopped. Meanwhile, the people you're helping remain completely unaware of the internal war you're fighting or the psychological price you're paying to maintain their emotional stability. They see only the saint and assume that giving comes naturally to you without cost or consequence. We've talked about the present, but the INFJ's greatest burden isn't what's happening now. It's what they know is coming. Most people are blind to this next reality, but for the INFJ, it's the loneliest part of the entire experience. The brutal tax of living 10 steps ahead. While other people look at a decision and see a couple of clear options, your mind immediately expands to consider dozens of possibilities. You see the ripple effects of each choice. You understand how a decision will affect different people in different ways. You recognize potential problems that haven't even occurred to anyone else yet. You intuitively understand the long-term consequences of choices that people around you are making impulsively. This is genuinely a superpower in many contexts. Your intuitive understanding of how things will play out is often scarily accurate. You can predict outcomes in ways that seem almost mystical to people around you. In situations that require deep foresight and consideration of multiple perspectives, you're invaluable. But here's where this gift becomes a genuine curse. This same ability makes simple decisions feel impossibly complex. A choice that should take 5 minutes spirals into an internal debate that lasts for weeks. You start second-guessing yourself constantly. You wonder if you made the right choice even after you've already made it. You question whether you should have chosen differently. You ruminate on the paths you didn't take and wonder if those might have been better. The frustration deepens because you often don't even trust your own intuition, despite how accurate it usually is. You're aware of your tendency to try to please others, so you wonder if your intuitive choice is actually what you want or what you think other people want from you. You question your judgment because you're aware of your biases. So even with all this incredible insight, you still feel uncertain about your own decisions. This is particularly challenging in professional environments, where your coworkers might see you as indecisive or hesitant because you take longer to make decisions than they do. They don't realize that you're not being slow because you're uncertain. You're being thorough because you're considering factors that haven't even occurred to them. You're seeing consequences they can't imagine. You're weighing variables they don't even know exist. But the perception that you're indecisive becomes internalized, and you start to doubt yourself even more. Living 10 steps ahead means you're constantly experiencing a timeline that others haven't reached yet. You see relationship problems months before they surface. You recognize when a project at work is doomed before anyone else notices the warning signs. You understand that a friend's new romantic partner is wrong for them long before the red flags become obvious to everyone else. This foresight creates a unique kind of loneliness because you're living in a future that others can't see. You watch people make choices that you know will hurt them, and you have to decide whether to speak up and risk being seen as negative, or stay silent and watch the inevitable unfold. You see the writing on the wall in situations where everyone else is still optimistic. You recognize patterns that predict failure while others are still celebrating early success. This knowledge becomes a burden rather than a gift, because it isolates you from the present moment that everyone else is experiencing. The paralysis that comes from seeing all possible outcomes is exhausting. While others move forward with confidence based on limited information, you're stuck analyzing every angle. You see not just what could go right, but everything that could go wrong. You understand not just the immediate benefits of a choice, but the long-term costs that might not become apparent for years. Many INFJs end up making impulsive decisions just to escape the torture of endless analysis. They choose something just to silence the internal debate, and then they immediately start questioning whether they made the right choice, beginning the cycle all over again. The very gift that makes you so insightful becomes the source of constant internal torment. You're cursed with the ability to see too much, understand too deeply, and predict too accurately, while still having to survive in a world that moves at the pace of people who see far less than you do. Now, none of the survival strategies we've discussed will work if you don't understand the non-negotiable disappearing act. This one step will literally save your nervous system from total collapse. Yet it's the one thing INFJs feel the most guilt about. The non-negotiable disappearing act. After a day of being on, of being present, engaged, understanding, and supportive, you don't just need to rest. You need to completely disappear for a while. This isn't regular tiredness that a good night's sleep fixes. This is a specific kind of emotional and nervous system exhaustion that requires complete withdrawal from all human interaction. During this recovery time, you need real solitude. Not the kind where you're with other people but not really engaging. The kind where you're completely alone, where nobody needs anything from you, where you don't have to monitor anyone's emotions or maintain any version of yourself. You need to exist in your own internal world for a while to recharge your depleted system. Here's where the real difficulty begins. The people in your life often don't understand this need, and they take it personally. They might feel hurt or rejected by your sudden desire to be alone. A friend might interpret your need for space after a fun hangout as coldness or lack of interest. A partner might feel abandoned when you need to withdraw. Family members might think they've done something wrong when you need to remove yourself from group activities. You start internalizing the message that your need for alone time is wrong, excessive, or indicates something broken about you. You feel guilty for needing recovery time. You try to be normal by not having this need. You push yourself to stay social and engaged even when you're already depleted, which only intensifies your exhaustion and creates internal shame around something that's actually a natural and incredibly important part of how your nervous system functions. The result is that you try to power through your exhaustion instead of honoring your legitimate need for recovery. You stay engaged in relationships and social situations longer than your nervous system can actually handle. You deplete yourself further and further, creating a cycle of exhaustion that becomes harder and harder to recover from. What should be normal, healthy self-care becomes another source of guilt, shame, and internal conflict. You end up firing people from your life not because you don't care about them, but because you literally cannot survive the energy cost of maintaining those connections. This feels brutal and selfish, but it's actually your psychological immune system trying to protect you from complete collapse. The guilt of choosing your survival over other people's comfort is devastating. You know they don't understand why you've suddenly become unavailable. You know they're probably hurt or confused by your withdrawal. But you also know that if you don't disappear and recharge, you won't have anything left to give anyone, including yourself. This creates a painful cycle where your recovery needs get misinterpreted as rejection, which makes you feel guilty, which makes you need even more recovery time. The very thing you need to survive becomes another source of stress and isolation. This isn't weakness, but a different kind of strength. Your survival strategies serve a deeper purpose in a world that desperately needs your insight. Check out this video where we explore how to honor these needs without the guilt, and subscribe for more truth about the INFJ experience. If you want to continue the journey to understanding yourself or an INFJ in your life, click either of the following videos, where we continue to unlock the secrets of the INFJ personality type.